Hello, hello, Jordan Chariton live. Status Coup. It is Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 in the United Corporations of America. Hope everybody's having a delightful day, staying safe in these trying times. Uh, have you ever, do you multitask at your job for those of you watching? Because I was holding my baby while talking to a source, while trying to book guests, while trying to transcribe a 5-minute video, all at the same time. Uh, way too much going on. Way too much going on today. But we got a good show. We have another conversation that's been leaked to us. This time with we're going to do the right thing, Mister. We're going to do the right thing. Alan Shaw, the CEO of Norfolk Southern. So if you're watching, I think they're watching. Norfolk Southern's like a company with their PR department that they have it flagged when their name is mentioned in headlines and other places. So my guess is somebody's watching from Norfolk Southern. So hello. We do have a recording of a conversation that Alan Shaw had with an East Palestine resident. It's not quite Watergate, but I would say it's very illuminating as far as the wide gap between the bullshit propaganda Norfolk Southern is feeding the masses about they're there for East Palestine and they're gonna stick it out, as long as it takes, versus what's actually happening, which is a whole lot of lip service and not actually delivering for the struggling, sick people of East Palestine. So we're gonna get to that in a minute. Please smash that like button, share this live stream so more people could see this. I think this is really illuminating. You won't see this on CNN, on MSNBC, definitely not Fox News or the mainstream media. You'll only see it here at Status Coup. Also, programming alert at 6 o'clock. We're switching things up. So at 6 o'clock on Wednesday, Kim will come after me now. So Kim will be right after us at 6 o'clock. She's going to have a guest on the Supreme Court's temporarily punting the deadline. It was supposed to be decided today whether the Supreme Court was going to uphold the abortion medication ruling, but they have punted it to Friday. So Kim will have a guest on that. She's also going to have a guest, if you're unaware, Jaylen Walker, who is an African-American man murdered in Akron, Ohio last year. 8 police officers shot at him. I think he got hit 47 times. Naturally, the grand jury chose not to indict these officers because this is America, after all. So after this show, right at 6 o'clock Eastern, Kim will be live covering the Supreme Court decision. She's also going to have a guest on what I think is outrageous injustice, that these officers aren't being charged or even seeing a trial. But first, let's start with East Palestine. So as you know, we've been covering this extensively. We're not giving up on it. Right now, we're trying to arrange 3 different reporting trips. One for me to go back to Flint next week, for me to go to Kalamazoo to cover, if you don't know, they're poisoning Kalamazoo, Michigan with toxic gas for over a decade. So I'm going to try to hit Flint and Kalamazoo in one trip. And then we're trying to send Lewis back to East Palestine. So hopefully all of that will happen within the next 2 weeks. So we'll tell you more about that later. But I want to start. Joining me now, you've seen her before, Ashley McCollum. She's an East Palestine resident who, like so many East Palestine residents, have been forced to relocate and uproot their lives since the derailment over 2 months ago. You've had a lot of symptoms, including the nosebleeds, fatigue, rashes. And it's kind of been up and down. As you've left East Palestine, the symptoms get better, but as soon as you come back, they kind of come back, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been getting the go around from Norfolk Southern. So tell people your situation with your kids, where you've been basically bopping around hotel to hotel. I don't think a lot of people realize that when Norfolk Southern is putting you up at hotels, it's not like you're in one hotel and that's it. You're basically having to move hotel to hotel to hotel constantly.
Yeah, because a majority of the time they only give you enough money for about a week. And if you don't book past that week at certain hotels, they have other services that do booking. So there's a chance that your room's taken or you can't book out because of an event going on. So then you have to go to the next hotel and then the next hotel. And then on top of that, we have employees of Norfolk Southern, people helping at the center. We have just basically people coming in for East Palestine. So that really limits where we can go and get hotel rooms.
So you, your children, your animals, you're basically having to get up and keep moving hotels 2 times a week?
So far, we got lucky with this last one. We were able to stay a little bit longer. Before that, we went to 8 hotels in a day because they're not all pet friendly. I have 2 kids, 2 dogs. Thankfully, my mom was able to take my cats, but it's getting to the point I may have to give them up just because they might not have a place to go to after they get their testing back, and they live in Pennsylvania.
And tell people why it is you're in hotels, because if you listen to Norfolk Southern, if you listen to the EPA, if you listen to the media that just regurgitates whatever they tell them, everything's fine. The air testing is fine. The water is fine. The soil is fine. There's no problems. So why is it that you and your family and pets are staying at a hotel?
Well, I had my own independent testing done, and even with that done, the person that did my testing was shocked that the house didn't come back more heavily contaminated. The smell's overwhelming. It makes you sick immediately when you go in. Your teeth hurt. As soon as you walk in, that's been the main thing everyone said. Your teeth hurt. Your mouth goes numb. You get tingling in your mouth. Your lips tingle. You get a headache. You feel confused, dizzy. So really, I can't even live there. And I have tried to reach out to CTEC multiple times to work out a different contract because I just don't like the wording. I don't like how open it is for at any time anyone could come in from anyone they list inside my home, outside my home.
So just so the audience knows, CTEC, CTEH, is the company that Norfolk Southern is using to test people's homes. CTEC, if you look it up, has been reported on as basically the go-to testing company for corporations that poison you. So BP used CTEH after the Deepwater Horizon spill. Oil companies have used CTEH. And magically, it just seems that CTEH is so good at what they do that whenever they test, they seem to find nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem to find results that the company that is paying them to test would like. So it's CTEH, and Lewis has reported on this. Lewis interviewed Chrissy Ferguson, who's an East Palestine resident. Her home is right above the creek, Sulphur Run, which is heavily contaminated. And in real time, the meters for the air testing were going off. The CTEH tester seemed very concerned. The EPA tester, because an EPA official was testing at the same time, they seemed concerned. They both called their supervisors. And then when the resident got the paperwork back, the reading was a whole point lower than what it read during the actual testing. So CTEH is basically Norfolk Southern doing the testing, but it's under the guise that this is a real testing company. Anyway, so you've tried to reach out to Norfolk Southern's contractor because I guess the contract they gave you for them testing your home, you didn't like the wording of it.
No, and especially whenever they have affiliates that can come in. So if it's just the people that are there testing at that time, that would be more acceptable, but that's not an option. They're not changing that. I would like to be present in my home while this test is going on. And if I would like to see the meter, like other companies that I've employed myself, they've shown me the meter. I don't see why that's a problem to see what the actual reads are. And it seems like they're really apprehensive about that, which I don't understand. If they have nothing to hide, why are they hiding their testing from the people that own the homes?
So just to be clear, and by the way, folks, if you come into this late, we have recording of Ashley's conversation with the CEO of Norfolk Southern. We're going to play in a minute, but their contract does not allow you to be present when they're testing.
It doesn't say that on the contract, but whenever I did have them come to my home the first time, I was not allowed to go in. And that was a consistent thing. Everyone said they weren't allowed to be in there when the testing was going on. I know Zuza had them redo her wording, which she was able to be in there. And I don't see why it's so hard. And it's kind of like this person gets this person gets that. So it's not consistently the same with anyone. They make it so much harder. And I even questioned about the mechanics of how they're doing it, how they're collecting this stuff. And it's not the right way. And when I point that out, they're like, well, this is how we're doing it. And they say we put a tube on our machine to check it. And I say, is it just for vinyl chloride? And they're like, yes, the individual tubes are for the individual chemicals that we're testing for. So if they only put vinyl chloride on, they're not going to find benzene. So if they put benzene on, they're not going to find vinyl chloride. If they, don't look for it, they're not going to find it. And I asked if I could get a canister test where we can actually get a reading of all the chemicals, and the canister would be in the home for about 12 hours to 24 hours, and then that reading would go to a lab for them to analyze it. They refused to do it.
Yeah, it's like if a police officer shot someone and then the police officer's best friend on the force went to do the crime scene. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what's going on here, only this is a paid best friend. CTEH is being paid by Norfolk Southern, and the homeowner wouldn't be allowed in to supervise. The only reason I can think of is if they think there might be toxins in the home that they don't want the homeowner to be in, but it's your home. So why would, even legally, you not be able to be there to see what they're doing? That does not make sense. All right. So Alan Shaw is the CEO of Norfolk Southern. For those of you who've been following, he testified to the Senate. The Republicans kind of, gave him little kisses. Democrats, for the most part, gave him little kisses with a few exceptions. Bernie Sanders was tough on him. One or two others was tough on him. But for the most part, he kind of hemmed and hawed and provided lawyered up answers because he was obviously lawyered up. Bernie asked him specifically, will you pledge to provide health care for all the affected residents? Wouldn't give a straight answer. A lot of what he said was just, we'll do the right thing. We'll do the right thing. Well, apparently he hasn't been doing the right thing. You and the residents Lewis and I am speaking to on a daily basis are, with all due respect, kind of up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. The media is not covering it anymore. Other than these temporary Band-Aids, which are reimbursements, they're not paying off your mortgage if you want to move. I don't even think Norfolk Southern is providing the testing data that they're doing. People are still sick and experiencing symptoms, yet the city seems to be trying to move on and have Easter egg hunts in a toxic park and now a street fair. So Alan Shaw, the CEO, has been this is what they do in these kind of communities. They almost try to pay you off. They're having barbecues for the residents. They're having barbecues and events for the first responders. But Alan Shaw is kind of dropping by unannounced. So residents have told me, Alan Shaw is here today, but it's not announced beforehand. So I guess you learned that he was going to be in town last week. So tell us about the process, how you discovered that he was going to be there and why you approached him.
I actually didn't know he was going to be there until I saw someone with cameras. And I said, this is kind of embarrassing to go and ask for money to pay for a hotel when I have a home that's not being taken care of. So it's just like you feel ashamed and you shouldn't. So I told the guy I was working with, I was like, please don't take pictures of me while I'm here. I don't want this to be out there. I don't like the way it makes me feel. So please don't do that. So we talked to the guy and he said, don't worry, we're not. So whenever he went back around, Alan Shaw was there. So that's why they were taking pictures, kind of posing them like, here, stand up, with all of our personal paperwork sitting out in files and little containers.
Who was taking pictures? Norfolk Southern's people?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. So they're taking pictures as if, look, we're here in the community. We're helping the community. Here's our photo op. Here's our CEO, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And He turned his back, and I even sent you a picture, and that's kind of what he did. He stood there with his back, and I was like, is that Alan Shaw? I asked the guy, that was helping us. And he's like, I don't know. I was like, you don't know if that's your boss, you know? And he's like, well, he's not my boss. So I said, you know what? I'm going to get up and go see. When I went and stood beside him, he wouldn't even make eye contact with me. A bigger gentleman had to come over and say, you know, did you need something? What did you need? And I asked if I could talk to him. And he said, I'll let him know and I'll come back and get you. And as soon as he said that to me,
was this at the reimbursement center?
Yeah, at the reimbursement center.
Okay.
So he just hurried and got out of there pretty quick. Didn't make eye contact at all. Didn't really talk to anyone. There wasn't many community members there at that point. So at least he could go over and say something nice. But that wasn't going to be the case unless you walked up and asked his bodyguard or whoever he was that you wanted some time to talk to him. So he said he would give me 5 minutes.
The bodyguard said he'd give you 5 minutes? Okay. All right. So if you only have 5 minutes with him, obviously you'd like to talk about a lot more things.
Oh, yeah.
Health symptoms, the community needs, questioning the testing. But if you only have 5 minutes, what was your top priority to talk to him about?
To let them know what we're hearing when we're sitting there. Right at the end of the table, there was a couple, they're an older couple, and they said something about long-term. Like, everyone wants to know about long-term. I mean, I am, and hopefully at some point I still will be financially able to take care of myself again. I have no other debt. I have my house, which my payments weren't bad. They were, you know, easy enough for me to go to McDonald's and work if I needed to and still keep up on my kids' grades, do everything I need to do with them. But a lot of people either have their homes paid off, they just can't sell their home now. Everyone's circumstance is different. And I mean, I just would like to leave and move on because I'm never going to be able to live in my house. If I'm not getting an exact answer of what's in my house, I'm never going to be able to clean it. And I'm always going to have that thought. When my kids go outside and get dirt on them, it's going to be a hard time for me to get past that. Like, no, don't touch the dirt. So I'm always going to have that uncomfortable fear. And I know a lot of other people feel like that. And if everyone's asking about long-term or not happy with the circumstances, you know, this is a valid point.
But to be clear, when you go back to your home, like present day, you still get these symptoms. It's not like this happened like a month ago. So your home still is causing, when you walk in, these symptoms of the burning eyes, you're nauseous, etc.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we have the 5-minute tape. We're going to stop and start some of it. I wouldn't say it's like scandalous in terms of him saying something scandalous, but it was very clear to me, because I transcribed what was said, that he's almost like playing dumb, like he doesn't understand basic things. He's trying not to say much, almost like that whole, like, hey, do more listening than talking, right? But most of all, this is the CEO, I don't know what his salary, but it's in the millions. And he's clearly playing dumb. And most importantly is towards the end, he says, let me take a look and get back to you. This was a week ago. So we'll see how much they've done for you in that week.
So that's why I waited for this, because I wanted to see if they did reach back out to me and mention certain things, even the testing that you'll hear in the video. I haven't heard a single thing back.
Right. So let's start. We'll start and stop as I want to ask Ashley about it. Here we go.
Anyone walks into my house, their teeth go numb.
The teeth go numb.
Teeth go numb, tingling in their lips, tongue, mouth, chemical coating. I can't be in my house for more than a half an hour without vomiting. I've had my own independent testing done. I've tried to get C-Tech to do the testing. I've been back and forth talking with them, doing different contracts. I just don't feel comfortable with the wording, and it could go against my mortgage agreement that I have, because I can't technically give access on a non-disclosed time that doesn't have an end date or beginning date.
Okay.
So I can do a verbal agreement, whatever needs to be done for that, but they're not really working with me.
So is it the issues with the access agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because any services that I would get, It's all verbal, and then I would make a payment. I've even offered to pay for the services that they're,
Pay for the services.
well, but just to get it done.
Yeah.
And from my understanding, from my own testing and what we're experiencing, I do not think my home's going to be livable.
What the independent testing package?
I have copies of it. They're in my email. There's a lot of ethanol. There's alcohol, PVC, cement,
PVC cement.
and other
And that's
types
from
of
a
chemicals.
testing company that had no idea what they were testing for.
And then the wipe test came back with 4 other chemicals that weren't listed for anything.
So could you stop it here?
More elevated than.
So I love how he's like, what does the independent testing say? Almost like, gee, shucks, there's independent testing going on? Because I thought, according to Norfolk Southern and the EPA, their testing is thorough and it's the gold standard and they're testing 24/7. So it seemed odd to me that he almost seemed like he said it in a way like, well, I'd like to see it. Maybe we messed up here.
But
What
that's
did
something
you?
I should carry all the time on me because I'm going to run into Alan Shaw randomly. So I should have that ready to go, printed out
Right.
and ready to show him.
What did you think when he was asking? Almost like it seemed to me that he was making it seem like he was surprised that independent testing would show things that they're testing.
I kind of see why he's surprised because every independent testing company around the area all of a sudden won't do any testing. So I guess he didn't think anyone would have thought while this controlled explosion was going on, people would think, wow, this is going to be dangerous. I should really start looking into getting testing done. So he must have thought no one was going to think like that. No one was going to reach out to people. No one was going to ask questions. But
Right.
I was on it and I did, and I had it. My test results were back in my hand by February 13th. So that's
I
how
also
quick
think-
I moved.
I also think he assumes that people aren't really getting a ton of independent testing because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And East Palestine is relatively low income. But it just seemed kind of not genuine to me the way he said it. Like, wait, there's different numbers, higher numbers are coming up somewhere
Yeah.
that we're not seeing. Like, I'm concerned about this. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it seemed like he was kind of
It makes
pretending.
sense to me because I would rather pay for that inconvenience now and make sure my family's safe and I know what I'm going to be exposing them to if I could. And now it's very clear it's going to be extremely difficult to find out all the chemicals, everything that's there.
right.
But even
And
if so,
folks-
that would be better than putting the money out into cancer treatment, into any kind of medical expense that I have down the road, or being beside my kids in a hospital bed. I don't
Right.
want to have that or encounter that.
Right. And folks, we got 330 people watching. This is the CEO of Norfolk Southern pretending to be a dummy. So please smash that like button, share this live stream. You won't see this many other places. Another thing is, wait a minute. Norfolk Southern's contractor. Okay. So it's not like CTEH is making the rules here. Norfolk Southern is telling them this is what we want and don't want. So they're not just telling you, no, you can't be in the home, that just because that's what they want. They're following what they're being told by their client, Norfolk Southern. So I just find it interesting that he's asking about the independent testing. You show me the independent testing, yet they won't allow you even in the home when their contractor is testing. Why should you show them anything if they're not even going to allow you watch their testing? It doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I digress. Before we move on, he was asking about, you're talking about the access agreement. So that's what he's talking about is what you were describing before,
Yeah,
which
to
is
access my property. But
Okay.
even if so, in Ohio, you cannot rent your home and you cannot give access to certain things in the state of Ohio. It could be a breach in your contract for your mortgage. And I mean, my mortgage is like 50 pages long. And I know I've read them at one point, but that was 7 years ago. And I know there are certain things. So if I give constant access to my home, that could be a breach. I don't know. And I mean, I'm not going to have an attorney there when they do this. I would rather be present and walk them through it. I have homeowners insurance that doesn't do anything. So, I mean, if they get hurt, maybe that'll pay out.
right. All right. So we have Alan Shaw. After you were told you got 5 minutes, go. Asking you for the independent testing, which it was on your phone, but you were, you couldn't show him because you were recording. So anyway.
Well, either way, I don't think that. I think it should have been more thorough. He should have known that who has had the test and who hasn't had the test, and he should have by now already reached out to those people, found out why.
Right. And to be clear, your independent testing found ethanol and what else?
Alcohol, PVC cement, a couple other things. It picked up fragrance, but surprisingly, that was in its own category and not how CTEC had been explaining it, that fragrance is a VOC. That's what this is. No, if you do the proper testing, you can break it down in its own category of VOC. Right.
Gotcha. All right, let's keep going.
Normal, and for us not being in the house since February 3rd, living there, it doesn't make sense how those would be there. And we want more of a long term.
I'm sorry.
We want more of a long term. Living in a hotel doesn't work. He does swing shifts. We're in a small hotel. I'm doing homeschool with my kids because they get sick when they go to school. I understand the agreements they have.
We went to 4 different hotels last week. We have to move Saturday again. Like, dude, this is ridiculous.
And I said, financially, it makes sense. I just want you to understand, if I was doing a hotel from the beginning, which I didn't, I came and got payment, 2.5 weeks ago? If we would add those all up together, look what my mortgage payment is.
That's your mortgage payment?
Yes, I'm financially savvy. I have an 800 credit score. I haven't worked. So I can't get a new mortgage, and he has his own mortgage too. So we can't even pick up and start over now. My kids were both honor students for their whole duration of school.
Yeah, we
straight A's
we have to do
2 different grades online
too, as well, on top of all of this. We have to pick up and move every week, every couple days.
Can you stop for a second, Colin? So here's how I know that he's not really concerned about you fine folks, because you got to read in between the lines. You've already told him your health issues. He didn't respond to that. Didn't say how you're feeling now. Didn't ask if you've been to a doctor. Didn't ask if you've had any, did you have any medical issues before this? Then you say, my kids, when they go to school, they get sick. I don't know. I couldn't see his eyes, but from the audio, he's not responding when you're telling him about the health problem.
He was laid back like this in the chair, just listening, almost like a robot.
Because it was stunning to me I think it was the Pennsylvania Senate hearing. They didn't even mention health symptoms for a half hour. Mm-hmm. It took a half hour into this event to even talk about the fact that a lot of the residents, well, I would say half the residents, maybe more, are having health problems. So you told him you have these health problems when you're in your house. You told him your kids get sick when they go in school. He doesn't respond. It's just very mechanic and robotic. He's only asking or responding to the financial parts, not the health parts.
Mm-hmm. And because he said he hasn't heard anything, the EPA early on, we didn't get any reports of anything. Well, I'm telling you, as a resident of East Palestine, I'm getting sick, and anyone that is coming to my house can vouch they also get sick too.
So I don't know if Norfolk Southern
from the center that's driving by right here.
I assume Norfolk Southern has access to the internet, to YouTube. I assume they have access to the newspaper. I assume they have access to the multiple community meetings where people stood up describing their symptoms. So apparently, if the EPA doesn't give them like a disc or something, it's just completely. This kind of reminds me, and I know people have different feelings on COVID, and sometimes some people think it's over or whatever, but it kind of reminds me when the media all just decided one day it's over, and like, even if 2,000 people were dying a day, we're just not going to report that anymore. It's not happening anymore. And we're just going to.
They had more deaths in Flint than almost anywhere for that small area.
Actually, at one point in the pandemic, I don't know if the audience knows this, at one point in the pandemic, Flint, Michigan had the highest positive COVID rate in the world. WORLD. Why do you think that is? Because all ages are immunocompromised, not just the elderly or certain people. And no, the media didn't report it. But it's just, I don't know. I just read, I was listening to this. I'm like, this guy does not even pretend to care. Like, well, how you feeling now? I mean, you could tell when someone's like faking concern, but at least have enough respect to pretend to care. But he doesn't respond to any of the health things you mentioned, including your children. All right, so we've established that. So he says, you mentioned your mortgage. He says, I guess he looked at the paperwork you presented about your mortgage.
Yeah, I showed him, just say that basically if I would have been taking this money from the beginning and staying in a hotel from the beginning, which I didn't. I went and stayed with family for a long time. And then I started staying in a hotel. If we would have did that from the beginning, my house would be almost paid off by now. It doesn't make any sense. So it's like kind of counterproductive. If you're going to just keep giving me this money every month, and for a hotel in some areas that I can find that's not sold out, it can be up to $3,000 for a week just because they're overbooking.
Like a relatively okay hotel nowadays, like $100, $120 a night. Add that up. All right. So he doesn't respond to the health issues. Let's keep going.
Yeah, and there's people that are here, some people that are here, some people that are with different companies that are coming in, or different events going on. But I mean, I don't owe that much of my work, and it doesn't make financial sense to spend this much on taking food out. The amount on the hotel, like, that's monthly payment you can even see, and I owe almost nothing. But I'm kind of stuck with that.
That's a one night in a hotel. Yeah. For a whole month.
Yeah.
Of mortgage.
So let me dig in on that.
Because we found a home, we'd love to move to Alabama. It's fully furnished. Leave everything behind. I've already cut it as a loss. Like it's terrible, but we can't live like this. And I can't trust, for me being in my home, even taking my animals into my home. I'm not going to take my kids in. So we don't know what to do. And this doesn't really work. And it doesn't work for our schedules.
Yeah, I understand. Let me see about the access agreement.
Okay. Do you need to know any of my information, or?
No, they've got it.
Okay. Because I've talked to everyone. I mean, I don't know much. If we add up what it would be, if you guys want to do that, pay it off, you can have the property, store whatever you want there, tear it down, whatever. I just want to start over again for my kids and my family.
Okay, let me ask some questions.
Okay.
That was April 12th, so a week ago today. And you have not heard back from him or anyone at Norfolk Southern?
Nope. And I've tried. And even whenever I was starting to close with that, whenever he saw my mortgage, he's like, this is your mortgage payment. Like, yeah, no, look at it. Yeah, that is my mortgage payment. I'm good with finances. I made sure at this point in my life, I was financially ready. Like, I could do that. I could retire early, whatever I needed to do. And now I'm stuck. And as soon as I'm getting nothing back, any kind of heart, like, I don't trust taking my animals in. Maybe you have a soft spot for animals. You don't like people, apparently. I can't take my kids in. Like, this situation is not just my own. It's everyone's. And the lack of sympathy or anything, empathy, sympathy, any emotion on his face to change was astounding. And it kind of goes with the situation. You're just dumbfounded and awe. Like, you stand there and really think about it. You're like, all of this is blatantly there. Why is nothing being done?
Well, what's interesting to me, this was about a 5-minute conversation, and I'd say some of it was about the issue with the contractor and the user agreement, but more of it was about, you're basically saying, from a 2 + 2 = 4 level, I'm trying to save you money. I'm trying to save you money, Norfolk Southern, because you would be paying less if you just paid off my mortgage. So you and your kids and your boyfriend could move wherever you want to move. It would cost you less. And he didn't even address that. At the end, all he says is, let me
My
see
kids
about the
can go to
user.
real school.
Right. At the end, all he says is, let me see about the user agreement, meaning between CTEH. So he didn't want to respond to the mortgage part, in my view, because even if I think how he's calculating it and Norfolk Southern is calculating it, even if for you that would make sense, and in some cases they pay off people. I know they've paid off people in Flint with special side deals, but don't tell anyone. But he probably knows. I mean, they know who some of the leading activists are, people who have done interviews. Probably knows he can't make a side deal with you because you're not going to just take something for yourself that they're not going to
No,
make.
I mean, I've tried every venue. I've tried
Right.
talking in public, telling how everyone feels. I've tried getting mad. I've tried getting upset. I've cried. I've done everything I can and tried different ways of going about things. And maybe you're more logical and nothing does sink in. And even if he would offer me that, I would be like, okay, well, now here's my boyfriend's house. Now here's this other person's house. We'll start going down and seeing what financially makes sense. Because really, if you start looking at it, I mean, it doesn't make any sense at all if he's looking at it money wise. If he's covering it up, he's doing a horrible job. Terrible job.
First of all, Norfolk Southern has enough money to go to 2 or 3 hotels in the area and say, we want to rent out for 2 months for X amount of floors, for X amount of residents for the whole 2 months. So you don't have to do this nomad shit and be constantly moving. We want to rent out this row of rooms and floors. They could have done that a while ago. So to make it a little easier because you're not the only one that's moving like this constantly. They could have done that.
We have
they
to
could
use their
afford
cards. They don't call here unless they think that something's wrong, or they don't call these hotels. So we have to go show them our receipts, get more money, and then roll it over and do the same thing over again. When that would make more sense too, for them just to call, book the whole hotel. I mean, even they might say, hey, you could do the whole hotel, but it's going to be higher. Well, then we don't have to keep doing this, and you don't have to keep track of our receipts. It comes to you. You can put our names on those rooms. So whatever you need to file would make more sense than losing rooms. Like nothing at all. Like, I don't get it. Nothing at all makes any sense.
Well, they don't want to set the precedent where they would pay off your mortgage, because then they're going to have to pay off a bunch of people's mortgages, and other people's mortgages might be a whole lot more than yours, depending on different deals and interest rates.
People in town, though, own their homes, and that's a big thing. And it's more of a emotional attachment because they've had generation and generation and generation. So some people want to leave because they know it's right, but then they don't want to leave, but then they also want their homes clean. So we need to have VOC cleaning for them. We need to have hazmat cleaning. You can't just Febreze or whatever on the walls and be like, done. And then the owner of that company tell me I'm not certified in VOC cleaning or hazmat cleaning. That doesn't make me feel any more safe.
Well, there's also another issue, and I know you got to go soon, so I'll be quick. But I got residents coming to me, providing me their paperwork for urine testing, and their levels are showing elevated levels of vinyl chloride, which is cancer-causing, particularly liver cancer. It could screw up female reproduction. It could cause brain tumors, a whole lot of bad shit. They say that they blew up 5 cars of vinyl chloride. I have reasons not to believe that. I think it might have been more than just that and other chemicals, but that's neither here or there. But you got residents that are testing with elevated levels of vinyl chloride, despite Norfolk Southern's contractors testing, saying we're not detecting any vinyl chlorides in homes or in soil or in water. EPA is saying the same thing. Well, I don't know. You don't have to be a chemist. How the hell do you blow up 5 cars of vinyl chloride and what? It just quietly went away and it didn't go into, and we know that it combusts into other toxins like dioxins, but nobody has vinyl chloride in their system. So that's another thing that they're just quietly, like the CDC, I broke this earlier this week. The CDC is urging, their recommendation to doctors is not to test residents for vinyl chloride, claiming some bullshit that, oh, it's too late. You either had to test for it right away because it leaves your system. It metabolizes very quickly. Well, that's under the assumption that people were only exposed to it in February. Well, if that's not true, by the way, but even if it were true, then why weren't they testing every resident right away for vinyl chloride? So the CDC, they're telling doctors not to test for vinyl chloride. So residents are having to beg, borrow, and steal to get chiropractors or other people to write out their scripts. But I have already 3 residents have sent me their paperwork where they have elevated levels. You think it's only 3 residents? And I think they don't want to test for vinyl chloride because what if the whole town tests for vinyl chloride? Let's say 40 or 50% have elevated levels. You think Negley next door isn't going to start wondering if maybe we need to test for vinyl chloride? You think name your close community, because this clearly didn't stop after a mile. This is a capital C cover-up. And it's shameful that you're literally asking, you're going to lose money on your home, by the way. You're not going to be able to resell it for more. You just want to cut your losses and move, but you can't because you have your mortgage left, and they're not really helping.
So, I wouldn't feel right. I have a family home. Like, I would not feel right finding out a couple years later that a child got cancer because they were in my home. So it is such a mental strain and a terror with the situation I'm put into because I don't want this to happen to anyone. I don't want someone to be in the situation just because I sold my problem. Like, it is an immensely difficult situation, and it's terrible that they're putting us in this. And honestly, with the testing of the urine, I would tell people 10 miles away, maybe 15 miles away, a little further, if your insurance covers it and you can get a urine test just to see, I would do it. It wouldn't hurt.
Well, most insurance doesn't cover it. Eric
Some
Kaza
do,
had to pay.
depending. There's little stipulations, certain things you can test.
Which is kind of crazy, right? Like, COVID testing was free for the first few years. You're going to make residents who have been poisoned have to pay for a $600, $700 test to test for vinyl chloride. It's just, this is a definition of you cannot find what you don't look for, and they're not looking for it intentionally. Before you got to go, tell people what they need to know because you and a group of residents are talking every day. You just met earlier in the week with Senator Sherrod Brown. Of all the senators, he's not my total cup of tea, but I actually think he genuinely doesn't know what the hell's going on because most of these politicians are just believing what the EPA or the CDC tell them. How was your meeting with him? Did he seem concerned? Did it seem like he's going to take action on some of the things you're talking about? And secondly, what would be your message to the audience? And if there's other people, I mean, somebody's got to hold Norfolk Southern and Alan Shaw accountable. I'm not talking about being violent, but he's getting away with just bullshitting people like you. And I think what they're really trying to do is just bullshit you, not answer, placate you, stall. So then in 2 months, 3 months, 4 months from now, whenever they declare we've moved all the contaminated soil, we've done 4 or 5 months of testing, everything is coming up roses. Good luck, residents.
Mm-hmm. That's why I'm worried about the long term. But Senator Brown, he was actually very sincere and was listening. He turned to each person and, he was listening and taking it in. And I think he wasn't expecting that much information to come from everyone. And I kind of had like a little meeting before to see, what are you talking about? What do you want to talk about? So we're not all saying the same thing and going over the same thing because it does get tedious and, that's what you're there for. And you're like, oh, now I don't know what to ask. So this way we're able to think and kind of gather our thoughts. He did say he's going to come back. His secretary has been reaching out, and if we give them a call or send a text, they've been on it. So that was nice. So we'll see where that goes. And if he does come back again, I hope that he keeps his word because it's been a lot of broken promises along the way. It's kind of hard to see where to go. Right now, it's in the unknown still.
I imagine it's been pretty depressing and mentally tough, too, for you and the other residents who feel abandoned. And Yeah.
At least it's nice where we are in the hotels. We get to see people that are going through the same thing, and it kind of makes you feel a little bit better and you bounce back a little bit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm sure Alan Shaw is going to jump right away. And, oh, I forgot to get back to her and actually do something for you. I'll stay on this. Lewis will stay on this. We're trying to send Lewis there. Let me ask real quick. When you're in town, does it still smell in certain areas?
Last time when I went, it didn't. But it really depends because it seemed like they stopped working on the tracks for Senator Brown.
Oh, I see.
So usually they
so the
do
senator
that.
comes the senator
Yeah.
comes in and they stop working. Look at that. So
And whenever it
All right.
heats up, you notice too. So it's going to get a lot harsher whenever we hit higher temperatures.
Thank you so much for taking the time. We'll stay in touch. And I'm digging and Lewis is digging on a couple things because there's a couple, shall we say, discrepancies with what Norfolk Southern has told the public about their little controlled burn. So stay tuned. We're working on that behind the scenes. But I know you got to go do stuff. So thanks for sharing.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye. Sorry about the audio. I think it was her end, that crinkling, which best we could do. And, you know, people are doing interview. Her hotel, I think the Wi-Fi was bad. So she was doing it with from her phone. But hopefully you got, you know, the point. And apologies for the audio. Keep smashing that like button. We got a little bit more to do here. As a reminder, at 6 o'clock, if you stay here, once this stream ends, you'll be automatically redirected to Kim Brown. She's going to be hosting the 6 o'clock hour. She's got a great guest on the Supreme Court decision. Basically, the Supreme Court was supposed to decide today on the abortion pill. They punted, so now they moved the deadline to Friday. So stay tuned for that. She's going to have a guest on that. She's also going to be talking to a guest from Akron, Ohio on a grand jury choosing not to indict 8 police officers for murdering Jaylen Brown last year. Jayland Walker, excuse me, who was shot by 8 police officers, I believe. I think he was struck 47 times. But of course, no police officer was indicted or will face charges. Because America. So a couple things about what's going on in East Palestine. What's going on in East Palestine and why I stay on Flint. Remember, for those of you who have watched Status Coup for a long time, keep those super chats coming too, because I'm going to read them in a bit. For those of you who have watched, I always use the term the playbook. I always use the term there's a playbook for how the government responds to these things, the EPA responds to these things, the CDC, et cetera, the state environmental departments. And it doesn't really change that much. The disasters and the situations change. They're all different. You know, Flint, for example, was a decision to switch a water source, and the plant was not equipped to treat the water, and they didn't add the right chemicals, right? East Palestine was a train derailing and then them venting and burning it. Indiana was a plant that went on fire, and so on and so on. But by the way, residents from Richmond, Indiana and surrounding are messaging me. The EPA lifted the evacuation zone. Residents are messaging me that they're sick still. But the EPA said it was safe. But why I say that I keep covering Flint is because if the people in Flint, the people that poison Flint get away with it, I have said since then, why do you think that governors elsewhere, the EPA for other situations, the CDC for other situations, state environmental departments for other situations, why do you think they would hesitate to basically do the same thing if everybody who poisoned Flint got away with it? Because they're literally doing the same thing right now in East Palestine. They're doing, in my view, bullshit testing, cherry pick testing. We showed you the clip 2 weeks ago where the EPA official admits their equipment, the testing equipment they're using to test, can't even find certain levels of contaminants, that levels that they call low. They can't even detect them. Well, if you ask Aaron Brockovich and other experts, their levels that they claim are not a concern. If you find X level of vinyl chloride or X level of butyl acrylate or X level of ethyl hexyl acrylate. The levels that they have deduced are not a health concern is bullshit. Most of the time, it's not based on public health, and it is concern, even if they say it's not. So the testing they're doing is cherry-picked. They're not using the right equipment, and independent testing has shown higher levels, has detected higher contamination levels. The fact that they didn't test residents from the beginning for vinyl chloride, which if you look it up, is scary. It's a scary, scary, highly toxic chemical, highly flammable, and it will cause cancer at relatively low exposure levels. No, we don't need to test for that, even though 5 cars were blown up. Let me rephrase. They are testing for it. They're saying, meaning Norfolk Southern's contractor and the EPA are saying, we're not finding it. Well, devil's advocate might say, well, Jordan, you're saying that they would knowingly test for something like vinyl chloride, and even if they detected high levels, they would cover it up? Well, from what I've seen in Flint, yes, that's what I'm saying. Because imagine for a second if they tested, in a thorough way for things like vinyl chloride and this and that. If they tested using equipment that could detect even low levels, and they said, we're finding across the board low levels of vinyl chloride in people's homes and this and that, what do you think would happen? You think the lawsuit would go, the bill for the coming massive class action lawsuit would go up a little bit? Yeah. You think the residents would be due more if low levels of a highly carcinogenic toxicant was found in their homes or in the parks? You think they would be entitled to more money? You think the EPA might be facing some legal liability? You can't find what you don't look for. And why not look for it? It's the money, Lebowski. We live in the United Corporations of America, and it's the money, Lebowski. Am I saying all EPA officials are corrupt? No, I'm not. Am I saying all CDC officials are corrupt? No, I'm not. But what I am saying, and I have lived this, I have seen it in Flint and other places. I have seen it with activists who have been fighting the fight for years. These agencies, unfortunately, for the most part, they are understaffed. I will defend them. They are very understaffed, and underfunded. They exist to protect business. They have been captured by corporate America, corporate capture. They are hammered every year, like every government agency, by the lobbyists. Damn right. As a Michigander, Status Coup had me at Flint. I'll be in Michigan next week, returning. So do I think that they would either intentionally manipulate testing or just use certain equipment that can't detect certain levels of things? Yeah, I do. Because it does not make sense. Just common sense. You don't have to be a chemist. How do you blow up 5 cars of vinyl chloride and none of it is in people's homes and none of it's in the air and none of it's in the water? And they would say, well, they say we dug a trench. We dug a trench and we piped the vinyl chloride into the trench underground. Well, I've spoken with engineers and they said to dig a trench and to extract over 100,000 tons of vinyl chloride, I think was the number. I might not be completely correct on that, but we're talking a shit ton of vinyl chloride. And to dig it into a trench in 2.5 days, I asked a couple chemists and experts and engineers, and they said that's hard to believe. And the proof is in the pudding. A couple residents have already been tested for vinyl chloride in the urine. Every resident that I have spoken with that got the test has elevated levels of vinyl chloride. Colin, come on for a second. I know you're a geek and are into superheroes and magic and all that shit. Can all these chemicals just magically evaporate and not go into people's homes, surfaces, soil, water?
No, by definition, they would, at minimum, if they went up into the air, then they go into the clouds. I don't know a lot about this, but at least in elementary school, I remember learning about clouds. And they either do that or they go and they sink into the dirt was like the two options, or they blow away into the ocean, I guess. But
I thought they banned the books in Texas. I thought they banned books in Texas where you learn about clouds.
Probably because I guess they would have to figure out a way because they teach NOAA now, so they got to add a lot of clouds for that. So I don't know what the cloud situation is anymore.
It's just fucking crazy. The whole thing's fucking crazy. But we're going to keep on digging because at Status Coup, we believe that if you were poisoned by the government or corporate America, which are basically one and the same, you are entitled to be made whole as best as you can. You are entitled to Medicare for the rest of your life, starting now. It should not be covered up, and you should not be left to slowly die. Let me read some super chats. Das Bo's Fleiss, 5.99 euros. To any Norfolk Southern people in the audience, I would express my opinion on your company, but YouTube does not allow the words I would pick. Damn straight. Kat, Faye, Garrett, $10. Listener from 2018. Thank you, Kat, for the $10. Before I go, public service announcement. We left a YouTube community post earlier. So look in the YouTube community section. We are looking for more people to provide their Twitter handles to us so we could add you to our new Twitter direct message group. The goal of this direct message group is get about 60, 70 people. And every time we post a tweet with our content, we post it in the group and we get a lot of retweets right away. The more retweets you get very quickly, the better chance you have to go viral. So check our community post. And if you want to be in the group, just comment with your Twitter handle. Also, right now we're putting the finishing touches on it. I believe I'm going to be in Flint and Kalamazoo starting at the end of next week. So if you want us to continue this on-the-ground reporting, me in Flint, me in Kalamazoo, we're trying to send Lewis back to East Palestine for a third time. Please sign up if you're not a member. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 to $10 a month. StatusCoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as a burnt cup of Starbucks coffee a month. StatusCoup.com/join. Now, don't go anywhere. As soon as this stream ends, you're going to be redirected to the 6 o'clock Eastern stream with Kim Brown. She has great guests coming up, including a guest on the right-wing conservative battle to get rid of not only abortion, period, but your ability to have an abortion through medication. So she's going to have a guest on that. The Supreme Court might overrule or might rule in favor of a court that already ruled against that abortion medication. So that'll be a first guest. Then she's going to have a guest from Akron, Ohio to cover the total outrage that the 8 police officers that shot and murdered Jayland Walker were just let off and not indicted. So that's coming up in 1 minute. Kim Brown, don't go anywhere. She's awesome. And this is going to be a great show too. Thank you for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Stay tuned for Kim Brown.